might come for me, the ones who developed the quadra-helix model, but let me do my best. If you look at the previous model that was existing was the triple helix model, and really, I look at provides that it's definitely an improvement or an enhancement of the existing model is supposed to function. The one key thing that is actually missing across deficit, how is the trajectory, how many taxpayers do we have? I saw one systems that we have, they are outdated. Are we seeing more data scientists come? Systems is actually lacking. And even I remember when we hosted our CEO, we still need to update the systems, update the processes. So it goes back to the capital tax, there's a reduction. If you really have to update those policies and structures and systems at the same time also. But the challenge now becomes, how then do they have a spin-off of their venture? Again, of the spin-offs of these different innovations into the market, whereas also to the community and even to the country at large.
Thank you.
Your question looks simple, but it may not be simple. I think from UK Center of Ecology and Hydrology, she's a researcher. She was doing some research with one of these power. Most countries in the world, so you have to be careful so that you are not selling out yourself, but you are doing this for national interest. So data sharing would be a problem, but information would not be a problem moving forward. The next question you were asking about the quadruple helix. I'll not use much English, but use an analogy here that I think we can all be in the same boat. That if you are a guy or a lady, you want to visit a guy or a lady either way, understand this a normal example, you have, because everyone naturally is a researcher, everyone, you are naturally a researcher. Even before I choose these shoes to come with, I had to assess so many things. Am I going to a dusty hotel, whatever? So as a person, or when you are a lady or a guy, you are dating a guy or a lady, you may not want to wear the same cloth that he saw you or she saw you when you are visiting their home. So you have to do research and you have to remember the history that you were having before you visited that home. So what I'm trying to say here is that we have what we call public preferences, which I believe should be included in the quadruple helix. Look at the public preference. What will the public say as an assumption over me, especially what I'm wearing, for example? Number two, so the issue of public preferences is key, that has to be included in the helix. The other issue on the same analogy would be, you have to take in all the details that you are being told by your partner or your girlfriend. There are some communities among us, if you are a guy, you are visiting them, they cannot allow you to enter the gate until you give something. They block you. So you have to get, and even the gift you have, you don't put it on the floor for them to take. You have to hand it over in a very respectful way. So if you don't take in all this information and you leave some information to go astray, you will pay more. What am I saying? I'm now also talking of what is the proportion of information we are receiving from research, translating it to policy, translating it to industry, translating it maybe to society. You may find that if I'm a leader and I've given some people an assignment to do, I'll ask them, how much research have you done? What sources of information did you get so that for you to tell me the information you are telling me? So, and I heard somebody saying this in the morning, we are not implementing our activities based on research. So you may find that what is translating from maybe policy to industry is maybe 1% of research. We like talking things theoretically, ideally, without referring to what has been there. You need to check examples that have been in existence. So the other issue therefore I'm putting across is the proportion of information being transferred from one helix to the other is still a problem. Finally, if I may add on this point is, and this is something that is killing at moderator, we seem to be praising the wrong actors. We are in a society where we're praising the wrong things. those days, somebody here, Professor Micheka, you respect such a person. So we need to go back to respecting the aspect of the helix. Somebody in research has done well, give him respect, let him be a role model. Somebody in the industry who has done well, we do the same. So this will serve as an example and translate to our kids as we move forth. So there is that element of role model. There is an element of assigning praise to the wrong helix, if that helix is within the four. So those would be my comments. Thank you.
Great. Just two final reflections, I guess, from Professor Wafula, Professor Gateru. Scientists are functionally mean. So how do we make this quadruple helix work? Like just maybe two practical steps of how we can meaningfully, synergize, the actions from the different partners that we've discussed. Prof. Wafula maybe, or Prof. Gateru. Prof. Gateru, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So the quadruple helix, it's a very good model, but we'll need to appreciate that first of all, we started with the triple helix, which did not involve community. And that in itself was already a challenge. So when you add community, now it becomes an even bigger challenge. But coming to what we need to do, I'll give an example. I sat in the board of an organization which was called LIWA. I don't know how many heard of LIWA. LIWA was an acronym for Linking Industry with Academia. And this was initiated through KEPSA to try and reach out to universities to close the gap. Of course, it faced many challenges, and for some reason, it could not be able to operate for long. So there have been those initiatives and really the desire to close that gap. But we need to understand that all these entities are very different. They have very different motivations. They have very different aspirations and focus areas. We heard in the morning from the head of public service, there's what government is focusing on. Maybe job creation, reducing poverty, or even putting money into schools and employing more teachers, building roads. So if we don't speak the language that the government wants, then we remain outside the table, as he said. So number one is to find the sweet spot of value proposition for the various stakeholders. Somebody will not come to the table, and I think Professor Mushiri spoke about it, until they feel that they have value to gain and also value to add. So that sweet spot is very important for us to find. Number two, we need to redefine the motivation for research. For a long time, research has been motivated by the desire to gain promotions in the universities. So if my desire is promotion, I'll publish whatever I need to publish, but I don't care who I collaborate with. So we need to shift even our appraisal mechanisms from what I would call inputs into outputs. So what is the impact of the research that you have done, so that you're not telling us I have 5 publications, but what's the impact of those publications or the research you've done to the community? If we start measuring that, then it starts getting done. And number 3, for us, speaking from academic institutions, we need to be out there. I think universities have been, they're called what? Ivory towers. So we speak to ourselves. So when and I was in a forum where somebody asked vice chancellors, when is the last time you were in an industry forum or a government forum? Very few raised their hands. So if we are not out there to where things are happening and decisions are being made, we'll always be seen as that outside child who nobody wants to talk about. So we need to be in the midst of it, change our culture, be trustworthy, be accountable with the funds that we get, because where there's trust, partnerships thrive. But where there's no trust and accountability, then people shy away. But the key thing, to find that sweet spot of collaboration between and value for the various stakeholders.
Thank you. Final thoughts, Prof. Wafula?
Has the question changed?
No.
Yeah, it's hard to add on to the strong points made here. I guess if you had to ask me what I think about the quadrihelix myself, I think just like a lot of other theoretical models, it's very useful. It creates a mental model that allows us to think through the important components that need to go into a partnership, particularly for purposes of utilizing what is essentially a very powerful resource within a country, which is a research and knowledge creation to drive change and improve communities. So yeah, I think it's tricky, and I think the reasons have been shared. But there is actually one that is quite interesting out there as well, the quintahelix, the 5 helix, which, again, not to get too academic, but it's just the idea that just like most other frameworks, there's a risk of looking at these 4 in isolation and look at them as pillars that are supposed to come together to create social good. But what is the connecting factor? So the connecting factor should really be knowledge, and I think that's the beginning of that conversation. That you need to look at the subsystems that are in existence, and then look at knowledge as a common thing that they have in common, including, like Prof has said, before I sit on the table, I need to know what I'm contributing. And if I use a very quick example, the knowledge creator, at least from the legitimate knowledge creator for hundreds of years has always been academic institutions, universities, and research centers. But the problem is they've been operating in ivory towers, and so they've not been circulating these, and that then has limited the impact, but also creation of new knowledge. So if, in this simple example, and I'll only take a minute to very quickly talk about it, imagine a situation where this is created, and it has direct implications on industry. And so what is that doing to the industry? It's spurring production. It's making the industry more efficient, and the industry is probably using better methods that are more applicable today, and new solutions that have come through innovation that was driven by research at universities. But also, the industry is also thinking about sustainability and the environment and, the kind of natural capital that industries 50 years ago did not think about. And the only reason this industry is thinking about it is because the universities are doing research and looking at sustainability, some of the work that we've been discussing here. And that then creates a new driving force that almost changes the popular social and culture and how we look at things. The media picks it up, and everybody's talking about the right way of doing certain things. So sometimes it's not about doing a new thing. Sometimes it's doing it in the right thing. So the media comes in as a subsystem, but also some of the cultural norms and the behaviors that exist start changing, because a lot of what was done through universities and research and found its way into application at industry with a sustainability angle has become what everybody's talking about. And suddenly, everybody sees the relationship across all these. Now, as long as the community is sold and everybody believes the new way of doing things represents a more sustainable planet and a better balance across the use of resources, then it becomes very easy for political systems to follow up, because politicians respond to political capital, which comes from certain shifts in behavior, practices, and norms within the wider society. That is impossible to do if it's not well informed by what's happening at the academic level and researchers, but it's also not well transmitted through different media platforms. And I'm not talking about TV. I've just done some research recently on communities, and it turns out the Gen Zs, the young people, don't even watch TV anymore. They don't like it. So we're talking about how do you find a way of very effectively using existing media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, and the rest, to actually shift some of these norms and practices and behaviors around industry practices, sustainability, a green planet, and everything else that we are trying to do, which is being shaped actively by what is happening within the universities. That way, and what the head of public service was saying is absolutely true. It's easier for a politician to respond to the fact that people are running away from a certain product or a certain way of thinking because it's not protecting the community and it's not protecting the environment. And so the policy naturally follows that. So I think the problem we've had is we've been trying to shunt out everything. And so we do research, and then we do a policy brief, and then we call policymakers in the room, and we tell them, these are very good ideas. I have a very nice policy brief here. It's been printed. I have 1,000 copies. Let us go and keep them in your ministries, and then everything will actually change. And the community is out there doing the wrong thing because that knowledge did not circulate within the helix. So to me, just going back to the point I was making, even as we think about these pillars, let's think about knowledge as a common resource. It's like the blood that circulates. The hand, the leg, the only thing they have in common is there's a circulatory system that allows them to be connected and function together. So let's go back to knowledge and actually see, even as this knowledge is moving, is everybody engaged in the creation, in the transmission of this knowledge? And are they getting it in a way that allows them to meaningfully contribute to this? Otherwise, whether it's the quadru, whether it's the quintahelix, I don't think that really matters a lot. I think we appreciate that all these ecosystems are important, but we just need to be very deliberate about creation, transmission, and utilization of the knowledge.
Wow. I really like that example. Very well illustrated. Knowledge as that circulatory system and, remaining at the heart of it. Believe it or not, we're out of time. But maybe we have time for a question or two from the audience. One question, maybe.
Thank you so much. My name is Edgar Wafula, and I serve as a CEO of a startup that is under SME, and I'm happy to see our CEO of the Association of the SME Enablers here. My question goes to her. I'm not going to talk about the academia and those who are professors. The world is going entrepreneurial, and we are seeing that there is lack of employment, especially from the school. Youths are finding it difficult to navigate in the job because of lack of skills and the requisite information necessary to deliver in the corporate industry. As such, the festival which is here is trying to make it possible for the youths and the undergraduate, postgraduate to make it outside after graduation. As a CEO for the Association of Enablers of SMEs, what role are you playing with the universities and the colleges to ensure that those SMEs and startups like us who are still in the university are able to get in touch with such an association so that we become vibrant? An idea shared is really important, and we will be able to get a pool of innovators who are able to deliver on our manifesto, that is entrepreneurship. Thank you so much, and I look forward to a positive deliberation.
Thank you very much. Mercy, did you get the question? Wonderful. My hosts, please allow me one question from a lady so we balance the gender, and then that's it.
I'll be very quick here. It doesn't need to be answered. I'm Nokuthula Mchunu. I'm from the NRF South Africa, National Research Foundation of South Africa. I'm just going to talk to the point of researchers being functionally mean. In my old life, I was a researcher for more than 15 years as an academia. And I will put myself also in those shoes that as researchers here in the room, we generate a lot of data. Yes, there's some that we want to publish, but I can assure you 80% of it we don't use. It sits in our computer. Do we think about sharing that data? Because we are not going to use it. So it speaks about what Prof said about culture change within researchers. And also, I would say here in the room, the NRF Kenya already has started the National Repository. Of course, it's mostly on policy, research, output. But I think with partners, we can think about extending that repository and becomes a data repository for the country. The data, yes, there is sensitive data, which is small, but most of the data that can be leveraged to get more information and knowledge out of it can be shared and can be useful to another person when it's not useful to you. Thank you. That's just my comments.
Thank you very much. Mercy, maybe you could respond to the representative from the SME, Mr. Wafula, and then we can draw it to a close. Is someone else with a question? I don't think so. All right, Mercy, please proceed. I'm afraid we're out of time, but Mercy's still here. Mercy, you're not leaving, right?
Yeah.
Yes, so you can, please feel free to reach out to Mercy right after this.
So thank you so much for that, and also the feedback. For me, one thing that when I was going through the NRF website, looking at the theme of this year, there was something that was there called transdisciplinary. How many saw that? Oh, it was only me. Okay. So for me, I thought it was very interesting because we always talk about multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary, but I actually went ahead and looked at what transdisciplinary means, which means work that involves collaborators from multiple disciplines in a co-equal partnership. And I think that can actually be one pathway or a value that we can take as different enablers or ecosystem actors to actually commit towards having a transdisciplinary working group, for example, whereby you're not just focusing only on academia and other different disciplines, but you're inviting multiple stakeholders and sectors to come together. For example, during lunch, I was telling the team about how if you look at the mining sector in Kenya, it's now picking up. But how many people are actually looking into it? How many have done even a simple online course from a different university just to upskill and to see the opportunities? So we need to have these multiple different stakeholders coming together to work together. And that's why SMEs play a very critical role, because if you look at the SME, they are the ones who are actually in the community producing a product or a service that is serving the consumer. And we are all consumers in one way or the other. But apart from that, they also serve as talent or even are able to be a knowledge generator for the university. But how is that being taken up? Another question that I want to ask, how many people here have a university degree? Just raise your hand. Wonderful. We're actually more than half of the room. How many of you wrote a project proposal? Because if you graduated, you had to write a project, right? So where is your project now? It's in a laptop that was discarded or you printed, gave to the professor, right? And do you know you spent actually more than maybe 2 years or 3 years actually working on that project? And that is already knowledge that has been discarded. So one thing that we actually are trying to do as ASEC, and just respond to your question, was to see how can we support the building or nurturing the entrepreneurial university culture. And by that, what do I mean? One is looking at the curriculum. So one way of addressing the curriculum, because also it's tied to different regulation and policies within the Commission of University of Education, is we can actually help universities to establish and manage the university innovation hubs. Now, if you look at an innovation hub, it's really a center of excellence that brings together different entrepreneurs in one room where they get access to training, they get access to mentors, access to coaches, and even industry experts could come in and actually give mentorship talks or different master classes. That was the one low-hanging fruit that we saw as a network, that we could provide that as value to the universities. The other thing that we are doing as ASEC is that we do have a category within the network that is called the University Innovation Hubs, where they actually join and be part of our network. I'm so proud to say that KCA University is part of it, Dedan Kimathi, Riara University, we have Strathmore University that is part of it as well. We have the Technical University of Mombasa. We have also one in Wajir and many other parts. Now, if you look at universities, even for example, Nairobi University, that is almost in many parts of the many different counties in Kenya, we already have a local ecosystem established. By working with universities, ASEC now is able to pair the University Innovation Hub with a private sector industry innovation hub, whereby now there can be a correlation and a linkage whereby when the student is done with their education and they've been able to actually develop a prototype within the university, they can now graduate to the private incubation center to now develop their solution to keep on growing. The other thing that also we've been able to do is looking at how we can have different roundtables, whereby now we bring in academia and also the innovation ecosystem to really now, as the innovation ecosystem, providing case studies or problem statements that actually the university should be focusing on. I'll tell you the biggest thing that we have now, the biggest gap, is early stage financing. How do we close that gap? You know, because, and also the idea is looking at how do we also activate local capital. How can I get Wanjiku or Chebet or Lucy to be able to invest into a business from her own money? Those are some of the things that we need to start thinking about at a societal level that can really help spur the national entrepreneurship ecosystem. The other thing that also we've done is that as ASEC, we get different projects. For example, we've partnered with FCDO, we also partnered with UK Tech Hub and many other development partners. And from the different projects, we actually hire faculty to go and do the training and coaching of these SMEs. So the entrepreneur actually gets both value. One is that they get access to a robust methodology that the lecturer actually has built his entire discipline on, so they're able to provide technical expertise. But even as they're doing that, we're also building the capacity of the faculty to be able to work very closely with the startup and SME community. Thereby, even for them, they have real hand experience that when they're going to work in a mango processing plant, they understand the challenges of what it takes to actually start and grow an SME. Now, picking from those different lessons and case studies, that can actually now be translated into curriculum that can now be taught in the actual classes. So for example, if there's a course on business technology or business and entrepreneurship, those real SME case studies become points of learning as well. The other thing that also we've been able to do is looking at how we can bring in government more closely to understand the innovation ecosystem. Looking at the different frameworks that are existing within government, academia plays a very key role, and actually government is an enabler of that, because sometimes you find that they actually give out different land, different assets to enable the universities to thrive. And to bridge that gap, where we now come in as private sector, is that we decided to host the county and innovation hubs roundtable discussions. And we just had one 2 months ago where we had Kiambu County, we had Nairobi County, and also Kilifi County governments. And the idea was to look at the county integrated development plan and to assess from the county integrated development plan, looking at the angle of innovation and entrepreneurship, how can we help these county governments actualize them? At the same time, also looking at promoting investments into that county to support the startups and SMEs to thrive. And from there, we also discovered that universities are also needed to provide the research. So again, that becomes an angle to operationalize the quadrihelix model in itself. The final thing, so tying onto that one, and the reason why we wanted to bring in the county governments was on something that Professor Mushiri mentioned about procurement. That right there is the biggest opportunity, if you ask me, on how the SMEs, how the industry, and how academia can work together, closely also with government. If we're able to actually have open tenders and opportunities whereby different people can actually apply and access revenue generating activities, that becomes a game changer, because it stops moving from being a document to actual opportunities that are revenue generating. At the same time, also emerging partnerships are starting to form that can also help the different universities to have the necessary research that they need. Procurement also is very important for the innovation ecosystem, because I can tell you one thing, government is the biggest consumer. There is no other bigger industry player, government is. If startups and SMEs would actually have dedicated opportunities to them with less stringent requirements, then I'm telling you, you will see Kenya catapult to be top 100 innovative cities, because they'll actually have enough access to data, they're able to work with government, and also they're able to be housed within the university, therefore accessing the different facilities to keep improving their innovation, and that becomes a win-win for everyone. Because when startups and SMEs are growing, guess what? We're creating more jobs across the entire value chain. For example, if you look at cassava, and I think NRF has done a good study on that, there's diverse opportunities, right? From being a smallholder farmer up to being an off-taker or even exporting the product out of Kenya to other parts of the world. So there's diverse opportunities only if we can look at procurement as a key entrant and opportunity right there. The final thing that we're doing this year is that we are hosting our fifth ASEC annual conference. And because ASEC is multi-stakeholder, yes, we do coordinate different innovation hubs across the 47 counties, but also we bring in investors, we bring in the government, we also bring in global actors to work together. Our theme for the year is actually collaboration for impact, and the tagline is looking at economic empowerment to solve unemployment and provide sustainable innovation. Let me explain. If you look at the current scenario that we're having in Kenya, we have a lot of civil unrest, and the biggest issue is unemployment. Universities are churning out more than 20,000 highly skilled graduates. You know, mechanical engineers, civil engineers, we have architects, interior designers, we have technologists, and many other fields of discipline. And all of these are well-trained and talented, but they have no job. Right? So then how can we actually address unemployment, leveraging even now actually the quadrihelix model, whereby we can look at government playing a very big role in terms of consuming all the products and services in the ecosystem, and then also we can have universities producing the targeted research to help us improve on innovation. And then the other thing about sustainable innovation, let me go back to March. How many people remember March? You know, we tend to forget things very quickly as Kenyans. But if you look at what happened in March, we had floods, right? Are you aware that Nairobi was the most hard-hit county out of all of Kenya? Nairobi actually suffered the worst, yet we have the best roads and infrastructure. From the Red Cross statistics, they were saying that more than 1,000 SMEs were wiped out in a span of 2 weeks. That again becomes a problem. I haven't had the universities coming up with a course on, you know, how to disaster resilience and management, like a short course or maybe 1 week. I haven't seen any courses tiered towards climate change. This is the reality we're living in now, okay? And guess what? This data about the floods was actually shared 1 year ago. But because it took 1 whole year to manifest, we forgot about it. So we need to find a way of making research become more bite-sized, whereby it's easily consumable, and then it's real-time and easy to access as the consumers so that we can make real-time decisions. Now, going back to sustainable innovation, we can be here doing targeted research that works for now. But as you have seen, we are living in they call it the VUCA, volatile, uncertain environment. Therefore, everything that we're doing, we must remain agile. And the startups and the SMEs are the best prototypes of this kind of research because they know how to adapt to different scenarios. But the universities definitely need to play a very strong role in terms of ensuring that they're up to trend with what's happening at a global level, but even also paying a close ear to what's happening now. If, for example, we are having civil unrest, do we have a corresponding course in the university that can actually help build more negotiators, for example, to help reduce the challenges? So there are many opportunities that are happening in the ecosystem. Those can be translated into an opportunity that the universities can tap into. And then, of course, the final call is, for example, government
in closing,
to still... Sorry, I know I can write a thesis on this, but it's just to say that there's definitely opportunities for operationalizing that, and really happy to also invite all of you for the ASEC annual conference that will be happening on the 30th and 31st of October this year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to cut you short.
No.
Yes, we've come to the end of our session. Please feel free to reach out to any of the panelists after this. Professor Wafula had to go to a board meeting, so please excuse him, but allow me to thank our hosts, the National Research Fund, for having us here and for allowing us to discuss this, I think this, pertinent topic. I think in every forum it's always discussed partnerships, collaborations. So I hope one day we'll get to a point where we are sharing more case examples and learning from those ones, as well as sharing also from different trans disciplines. I think that's it from us. Thank you so much to the host, thank you so much to the panelists, thank you so much to the audience. Have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you. Let's appreciate the panelists again and the moderator. Thank you. Now we will proceed to our next session. And I'll urge you at least we finish, we hold on until we finish. And our next session is on resilience and adaptation in the face of environmental change. And the moderator for this session is Justin Berman, Technical Director, Infrastructure Science and Engineering from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Welcome, Prof.
Testing. Oh, okay, very good. Yes, if you're here, I know that we're running a bit over on time, but we will try to make some adaptations to that in the schedule here. As was mentioned, I'm Justin Berman. As you can tell, I have an American accent. I'm from the United States. I'm very glad to be here and very excited about the energy that's in the room, and really excited to be given the honor of being able to moderate such an important session in the resilience and adaptation in the face of environmental change. And I'm going to go ahead and ask the panel members, Ratemo, George, David, and Charles, to go ahead and come on up here, because we'll do introductions with them. You know, when I heard a theme that kind of resonates, and I wanted just to kind of bring it up again, and that is how science informs policy. And we hear about that time and time again. And when I was looking at what are some of the policies that I think involve, environmental related topics, one of the big policies, of course, is Kenya's goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 32% between 2020 and 2030. And that's a pretty big goal. And a lot of the climate issues that we've seen have been a result of some of the, perhaps the greenhouse gas emissions. There's ways that you can do this. One, you can try to remove the greenhouse gas emissions. Another one is you can try not to generate them. And on the not generating them, often we try to do and use renewables. And I was really very pleasantly surprised to see Kenya actually uses 90% renewables. That is an unbelievably large amount that many, many countries can really take an example from. So well on the way. So whether that's geothermal, hydro, wind, or solar, how are we going to get the other 10%? Because the goal is 100% by 2030 for Kenya. And so thinking about what scientifically needs to be done to try to get that to occur. And then we heard a little bit earlier also, how can we remove greenhouse gases? One way is the very ambitious plan to plant the 15 billion trees in 10 years from 2022. And the latest numbers I've seen, it's slightly under 10%, the coverage of Kenya in forest. And the goal by the administration is to be 28% coverage by 2032. So what do we need to do with agricultural science to advance that? And we were presented with that original policy of how do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Here are some of the data of some of the things that's being done. And then what are some of the science that can be done in the future? And what I really want to encourage for the students that are in the room is to think about 2032 is at about the time where many of you will be graduating from college. And it will be the types of topics you can look at helping shape and inform for the administration, and then years down the road, where you actually can become the policymakers as well. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and kick off the session, and we're going to kick off some of the questions here. My microphone's not working, but I can go ahead. Is it now? Okay, fantastic. So we have a very prestigious panel here, and I wanted to go ahead, and I'll start with the gentleman to my right. I'd like you to go ahead and each introduce yourselves, describe the work in the relation to creating resilience in an increased complex society and how it affects environmental issues.
Good afternoon. So I'm George Kalfas. I too am with the Corps of Engineers, and I'm responsible for ensuring that soldiers have accessible training lands. But to do so, we need to make sure that we're good stewards of our land. So whether soldiers are, driving vehicles or going through the woods or the deserts alike, how do we ensure that we don't damage those land conditions into the future? But also know that we have other parts of the ecosystem that live there. We have our animals, we have different plant systems and the like. So how are we protecting those? So I'm really charged with ensuring that a lot of what we do for training is also protecting our threatened and endangered species and different land management. And we also think about how we better use energy and water, which, as Justin just mentioned, the really focus of Kenya on renewables is quite amazing. I was here in June and learned about some of the initiatives, and they really truly line up with a lot of what we're trying to do. And before there was a mention about how does academia involve with government and entities and private sector and the like. Justin and I and others, we try to really take what we do as a government and share and learn from others. So really see a nice partnership in what Kenya has been successful at doing that we can learn from. And hopefully there's other ideas that we're able to share as well. The question Justin asked is the interconnected world that we live, and how do we add social complexity, think about that. And so I really think about the energy sector and think about industry. We talked about the industrial base this morning, or maybe lack thereof. And so I would just charge you that as industry is to grow, so will the demands on energy. And so how does that all come together sustainably? But also thinking about many of the projects that we see in the room over there, they're projects, they're not industry. And so how do we bundle them together and so they become an industrial activity where maybe it's a factory, maybe it's some other large-scale operation. And when you do that, we both need education of the scientists and engineers creating the next iteration of that science. We think about Apple and the iPhone, or Samsung and their phones. They don't stop innovating their phones or their earbuds or other technologies, and that's what we have to do. So we have to have ingest of science and innovation within those technologies, but we also have to have the people to put those together, to maintain the machinery or the equipment, or to make sure that we have power to those systems. So it's truly an ecosystem. So as our industrial base or our innovation grows and our leverage on that innovation grows, so too does how as we're able to expand our societal complexities inside our local areas, especially thinking about unemployment, bringing down unemployment through industry. So I'll pause there. Thank you, Justin, and pass on.
Thank you very much indeed, Justin. Really, I think mine, being a local person, my name is Ratemu Micheka, the chairman of National Research Fund right now, but previously really worked with National Environment Management Authority, NEMA, and I think the subject is very close to my heart. And our role as NEMA then still is to ensure that there is complete protection of the environment in all forms of bettering livelihoods. When I saw the question on resilience, I realized that as a young nation, we do have policies on various issues, and in particular, when I listened to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals yesterday, all of them very clearly articulated by Monica. Let me say this, as a nation, we have issues, really big issues. When we talk about water, when we talk about deforestation, when we talk about pollution, when we talk about land degradation, and when we talk about diseases and health, to me, every one of those needs attention. And it finally touches, really, on climate change. You change the course of a river, you have affected the original thought, the original flow of the water. When you deplete a forest, you change that micro ecosystem in an area. And I'm sorry that the students who were supposed to be here may be in another session, but I think for us who are here, I think the key thing to know is that we have policies, and it was said a while ago, policies of all types, including environmental policies. I think Kenya has one of the best acts of environment worldwide. We used it, we made it, and are using it. But adhering to it and applying what it states becomes a major problem. We all live in one area, one environment, one ecosystem, one world. And every time we talk about climate change, resilience, adaptation, we really say same thing, same hitting. But the problem of counteracting the impact that we cause becomes a major issue. One statement I'll make, because I counted we are 6 and each one of us does do 10 minutes, we'll be here not whole hour. Let me just make one statement. And I think I give a live example. In 1980s late, I went to a conference in a place called, in France, a place called Dijon, through Lyon. And I had not encountered bottled water in Kenya in the early 80s, mid-80s. When I got there, I was being told that you have to buy a bottle of water in French at some money, the little francs. And I said, in Kenya, we don't buy water. We just drink water from free. I was told clearly that here water is as expensive as alcohol or as a bottle of beer. Then I said, now, do we buy? Yes, you buy. When I came back now, we realize every time we are in here and in your places now, we have water being sold. Typical change of climate, typical change of river courses, typical problem of pollution. And I'm imagining that in the year 2070, 80, everybody shall be actually buying water if we don't take care of what we have now. Climate change touches on every area, including industrialization. We are what we are right now. Of course, we argue in UN meetings that the continent contributes so little that we don't have to worry about it. It shall be big. So let me stop here, moderator. Thank you so much for really being here. And I'm glad I stopped here so that my other colleagues can chip in. But my point is simply that we need to be educated. Let's talk about the same thing 100 times, but maybe 1 or 2 people out of 1 million shall take action. I thank you all.
Good evening. Yes, my name is Brian Serone. I am an environmental scientist by profession, and I am currently serving as the Director of Operations at ISISA Limited. And I also have to mention that I am a graduate of Jomo Kenyatta University because of our founding VC over here. And these are some of the fruits that I think are being seen from the great university. And I think being here, it's quite important because at first it was quite inspiring because I was looking at the bio of our moderator, and his life in civil service is actually the total amount of years I've been on this planet. So you can try to imagine how much experience they have. And I think this is a very important point, especially as a person who has great interest in the science policy interface, and also touching on what we do as a youth-led company on innovation. And we are in such a time that we need to leverage and have ambitious actions for us to actually tackle climate change. If we continue working with our conventional ways, then it means at some point we are going to get to the breaking points and it's going to have a very devastating effect. And as a country at the moment, since we launched the National Climate Change Action Plan last year, you find the vision is very ambitious that, in as much as you are developing, in as much as you are trying to grow, we have to make sure that we are focusing on adaptation, and this is what we are now having as a discussion topic for today. So simply put, some of our strategies that we are working on, they are following a specific sequence that I think it was mentioned in the morning on linking science, policy, innovation, communication, and the community. And this is quite important because, when you talk about climate, this is more about science. We are talking about evidence-based science. We are talking about the past that has been there. We are now talking about predictions in the future. We are now talking about actions that are policy-oriented. So as our professor has mentioned, Kenya, we are very, very far. And in fact, globally, we are being called the green country because we are leading in matters policy. So we have to ensure that the science policy interface is actually intact. When you now go before we get to the community and translate these things, we have to make sure that our innovative solutions are actually communicated in the best way. And there are two things involved when you're now coming to give communities these strategies. One is that we have communities that actually base their knowledge on the traditional systems. So we have to make sure that these jargons that are there in the climate field, they are now toned down and we make them understand. On the second bit is that we now go and empower them to understand what is happening at the global level. So I think this panel is very interesting and I look forward to actually discussing moving forward. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is David Ngigi. I work with the National Commission for Science, Technology and Innovation, NACOSTI. Basically, NACOSTI is one of the key actors in our RSTI sector. From the onset, let me just say that I think the choice of this topic is very timely, is very relevant, and thank you to the organizers for having created this opportunity so that we can have ideas and discussion around that. And what I just want to say is that sometimes we always say the sky is the limit, but I would say sky is not the limit. Our minds are the limit, so that we really have to put our minds together, address the issues of this climate change. And I will even ask, because of we are living in a rapidly changing times in terms of climate and in terms of technology, because presently we realize even the technologies and the emerging technologies that are even coming in already ahead of our policies and the likes. So basically, NACOSTI, from perspective of what we do in terms of the coordinating the sector, promoting better science, technology, and innovation, because that is the way to go. That's the solution. We have to have our solution. Our solution, as my colleagues have said, the panelists, that we need the evidence-based, that is data-driven, that is that have to really speak to our real issues, to our real challenges, and it is for us, just as we were told by the PS in the morning, it is us to sort our problems, ourselves to sort our issues. So again, COSTI is able to bring the issues of the advisory and regulations around the whole space. And that's why I wanted to look at the whole space of climate change, the issues of technology rapidly changing, because these are things that are really disrupting the space we're in. And what we need to do, we need to adapt. We need to create our resilience. And one of the things that we're doing as a commission is to assist our institution in preparing for these emerging changes. It's really to deliberately try to mainstream research, science, technology, and innovation in our institution, our ministries, our agencies, into their core mandate in terms of their practices and in terms of their program, so that we are able to build a resilience across. How do we are able to navigate and survive through this disruptive moment. So in a nutshell, what I think I want to say is that each and every actor, each and every player, we have a specific different roles from different corners to contribute this global agenda, as I would want to call it. Thank you. Let me say that for now.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Charles Lange. I work for the National Environment Management Authority, where I lead environmental research and planning. Of course, where the Prof was before, and I want to take this opportunity to salute the Prof for the diligent leadership he gave into this institution. Also take the opportunity to really appreciate the organizers of this conference for considering to invite NEMA to come and share their perspectives with regard to this. I will not repeat what my colleagues have said, but I want to underscore two things in this for increasing resilience in this complex environment. First, I think one of the most fundamental things is capacity building. I think often than not we have realized that as the environment and complexities start to set in place, the more we need to get to know how to deal with it. And that can only happen through capacity building. And I want to appreciate the role that universities do in really adapting to the new changes in the environment and how they are able to maneuver through and capacity build the young people who are the future for this country, including also us who are on the other side who are not on that age gap. And so for now, where we sit in NEMA, out of handling many complex issues that we face on a daily basis, we found that when we engage with the communities, when we engage with the people and build their capacities and how they can be able to handle different issues, you tend to see people sort issues and offer local, homegrown solutions. And so I want to underscore that really we should always continue to build capacities around these complex scenarios for increased resilience. Let me also underscore the issues of planning. I think one of the things that I keep on hearing is that if you don't plan, you plan to fail. And so why is it is important that we continue to face different scenarios in this, the more we need to have very good plans and good strategies that we can be able to circumvent through the emerging issues. Of course, my colleagues are very ably talked about the role of data in driving these scenarios, and so why I really commend research institutions in this country, because we really know there's cutting edge happening in this country on issues as they emerge, reversing from climate change through pollution to many other things that affect societies, including economies. And so why we also need to do that. And also technology, leveraging on technologies. And so I want to thank once again the organizers for really bringing NEMA into this. Thank you.
There's a really good range of answers. We heard things that span from trying to put new technologies out there to trying to understand what do we actually need to know are the significant problems and engage some time and effort on those. I'd like to ask one more question here, and we're going to go starting at the end there, coming down. And I'm hoping everybody can take maybe a minute to answer kind of from we know that there's a lot of change. We know societies feel it very strongly, whether it's through the downturn in the economy, whether it's natural hazards. What are ways that we can create social resilience in the communities? And if you could just take a minute to do that, and then what I would love to do after that is open it for questions to people as well. So please.
Thank you. I think, as I said, I just linked to that, including social community resilience. I put the issue of about leveraging on technologies here, which has come out very clear here. I think we have seen models whereby technology is contributing to easing some of the social economies. We know even when we talk about the food security, because this is one of the classical issues that really affects us. If you deploy more technologies, some of them blended with native or homegrown solutions, then you're likely to solve some issues here. Capacity building, I talked about it. I think there's quite a lot that our communities need to know and to increase their capacities in transforming the socioeconomic scales in this. I think it's 1 minute, but we can continue to engage this. And so thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, I think it is important to address that because at the end of the day, the communities are at the core of it. And I think it, one of the things is probably the expanding the communications and collaboration across the different players within the community, because communication is key in terms of building resilience for the communities. And the reason that the COVID pandemic showed us how important it is, the aspect of communicating and communicating effectively and having everybody, every player in it, play different roles, how to be able to communicate the risks, how to be able to communicate, because as we all say, information is power. So the community will need to get the right information for planning and for seeing how to mitigate some of the other dangers. And of course, how to increase, again, the access to resources as we're able to build our community resilience. So again, access to resources is key. If we are to get it right in that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think I'll try to base it in this way, that most of the solutions that we try to project probably in the climate space, they fail because we do not take time to actually analyze what the communities want. So as part of enhancing resilience, we need to ensure that, be it communication, be it innovation, both technology and eco-innovation, the nature-based solutions, they are centered with what the communities need. And this calls now for a transdisciplinary approach in whatever we do. So when we are going to communicate on matters to do with now resilience, adaptation, mitigation, we need to put at the center that this is what this community was doing since time immemorial. We don't give them new solutions to bring in, but we now tell them how to tailor-make them, because this is what they believe in, but this is what the reality says according to science. So we now tell them that, this and this is happening because of this. Now, the education that you give them, the capacity building that you give them, then that is going to bring a new step. And also, because we have different levels in the society, I am a real believer in policy, in as much as we have a very big gap in policy formulation and implementations. Some of the things that you can be able to give to the community, we need to center them on policy, so that if they are going to agree on this, if they are going to do so and so, they are being backed by some regulations that will now help them be implemented in a systematic way. Thank you.
Justin, I think I can paraphrase this question like this. If I had all the money in this country, or resources, to counteract what is asked, I'll say this. Justin, in this country we have what is called wards, equivalent to boroughs in the States. I would teach persons on the dangers of future catastrophes on environment, climate change. I will go for really what is called awareness to the people, to the last person. I will go to the participation of these people, to the last letter of these persons. Then I'll even go lower and make sure that childhood engagement from the lowest continues to be broadcast, so that they know what they expect in their 90 years, 60 years of their development. Public awareness, participation, education, on all aspects that can touch on our health, environment, climate change, even food security. Thank you.
I like that, actually. It's we want to think globally, but we act locally.
Yeah.
And we are a part of the community, and when a natural disaster hits, we're affected locally. Our family, our community, the peoples around us, and we're locally impacted. We may not be able to go get food or water. Mm-hmm. And so it comes back to what's our redundancy then in our local community? How many people looked at their cell phones today? If a natural disaster takes out our cell phone towers, you know, what are we going to do without TikTok and all the other things? So what's our redundant communication? How's our road network infrastructure so we can get across to the next community to ask for help? What's our hospital redundancy? So, you know, really when we think about resiliency, we have to think about what are those redundant innovations that we have. And if we're reliant on one type of fuel source for cooking or for getting from one location to the other, or we're reliant upon bottled water or the like, you know, if that system's disrupted, then it's really catastrophic for everybody. So, you know, I'd really encourage, you know, innovation, thinking about what is, how do we build in safety nets to those things so we can really act locally.
You know one thing, can I just interject? Really, something he said a while ago, and I don't think maybe you picked it. When you train military, you train responsibly. And I did not know that you can spare trees, forests, deserts by accurate training of military. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Very interesting. I'll pick it up with you.
Okay. Happy to do so.
Oh, really good discussion. You know, a lot of the themes here, community, public awareness, having people understand in the language that they understand, not the language of science always, but understanding exactly what this means to them, not now, but 90 years down the road. That's a very important aspect. I'd like to go ahead and open this now to take a couple questions from the audience. Question way in the back of the room.
2 hands up. Thank you. Well done.
Check. Yeah, okay. My name is Clive. I'm a media practitioner based here in Kenya. And my question is on the climate change. We know that as Kenya, we don't exist in a vacuum. We exist within the international system. But then again, there's one particular country which withdrew from the Paris Accord, and that is a superpower, US of A. So in terms of this climate change mitigation and adaptation, what happens if President Trump becomes a president for the second time? Thank you.
You know, you can ask hard questions also. What I don't mind trying to tackle this one, if I understand. It's like if I can paraphrase, because it was a little hard for me to hear. I think, as I understood it, with a superpower like the United States, and if we have a change in the administration, how is our posture? Is that roughly as I understand? What I've learned, and I'll kind of use something from our history, right, because history matters. Thomas Jefferson loved bureaucracy because the founders of our Constitution wanted no single individual to be able to make a decision on their own. And that sounds like you know, sometimes I make fun, working for the federal government, that bureaucracy gets in the way. Part of it, however, is because there is a system of checks and balances. I can guarantee you, in my 30 years of federal service, I have seen lots of leadership come and go, but I've seen the issues still be the same, and I've seen that our response to them might have to be shaped differently, but that we still are addressing the topics because they are something that communities resonate and understand and that we all feel. And so that's my way of saying, regardless of what administration comes in, and I don't speak for the US government in that regard, we are very good at making adjustments based upon the resources that we have and based upon the problems that we do collectively face. And I don't know, I'm going to actually also ask George, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, we go through leadership change at the president level every 4 years. So, and everybody has their own policies, and they make decisions, and members of our government, from local to federal, they all have things that they want to try to accomplish. And so, you know, we continue to move forward on climate change issues, and sometimes you couch it as that we're doing climate change, and sometimes we're doing it as we're growing the industrial base on energy production. And so at the end of the day, we're still working towards goals that meet, you know, that are improving the lives of people. We just give it different terms on many occasions. Hope that helps.
Thank you. That was a very good question, and I'm glad, because it was a very direct question, and I think it's an important one. Any other questions from the audience? Yes.
Yes. I have the mic. I don't know.
Oh,
whether I should go
yes,
on.
please. You have the mic. Whoever has the mic wins.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank the panelists, and one thing I've observed is that every panel has exhaustively talked about the local collaboration, but avoiding the international collaboration. And I know we have a lot of problem when it comes to international collaboration, because getting the right persons or the right people to, or institutions to collaborate with is very difficult. What are you doing about this? Thank you, for the research faculty and the individuals.
Would somebody down there like to take and answer that? Take a stab at that. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I can see my former DG is really focused on us. So let me bring it to this context. I think this is a very important issue that has been raised by the participant about international collaborations, and because this is what I think brings a lot of new dimensions into the systems in addressing what we've been discussing here today. For us, I can give our own case. I think we personally, as an institution, we have been forging partnerships with a range of relevant institutions, and the institutions as well as individual, both for research and many other aspects of addressing issues that affect our country. We have collaboration extending to Europe, Americas, and Asia in these respects, in projects, research projects, and also projects that are addressing some specific issues. As you know, we are the supervisor, we supervise and coordinate matters environment, which is a very wide area, as Professor may allude. And so we have programs around compliance enforcement, we have programs around, because compliance enforcement is very critical, and every day you hear about issues about what's going on in climate change, you're going about pollution and all this. I think colleagues here have talked about the importance of having data to try and also guide policy science interface. And so this is one of the areas that we have found it easy to forge collaboration is this. And the way we do this is, first of all, we do joint proposal development with the institutions. We also engage in frameworks of cooperations, which is very more or less equivalent to MOUs. And so I know different institutions, we have different experiences in bringing this, but if you have a good agenda, let me say this, on what you want to address issues of a country, not individual issues, then you are likely to get very good collaborations. So please come out with very good selling policy, like a strategic plan that addresses specific issues, and you will see a lot of interest in people partnering with you. And you must also be very much conversant with the current issues that are affecting the globe, like the issue of climate change has come repeatedly here. This is the selling issue now across the globe, and so many other issues. So Please, if we package ourselves very nicely, we are likely to see a lot of collaborations, and people, even international collaborators will come for us. I thank you.
Thank you. I think we have the one more question that we can take, and then we're going to conclude the session.
Okay, my name is Chris Odindo, and I work at a university in the UK, just visiting the country. Just to add a couple of things from the points that were made, I think for me it's important to think about not just enhancing community capacity, but looking at strengthening community institutions, like local schools, places of worship, community centers, because then those are the anchor points that provide services as hubs for community engagement. My question, though, is this. What are some of the key barriers and challenges that communities face, to your mind, in developing social resilience? And what strategies have you seen successfully overcome these obstacles? That was my question.
Let's try to get somebody else from the panel to answer that.
I think I'll make a statement, really, and I may be wrong. I said earlier that the Constitution, and then still in a document that governs NEMA, has got among the best articles livable. It is the execution. It is the execution that matters. Am I clear? You got me? You can make a statement that you must move left. Let me just give an example. On the highways, our highways, you can exit either left or right. And you can get in either left or right when you drive out on these highways. When you exit left, the very first vehicles coming from a third lane will hit you. Think what happens. It's a complex issue, but it is execution.
I was told I spoke a little too soon. I think there was one other person that had a question out there. I'm seeing like 5 hands. Who were you talking about?
In that brown jacket.
The person in the brown jacket.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jane, and I'm a researcher at Shark Dwellers International Kenyan office, and we mostly advocate for the rights and inclusion of residents in informal settlements within the city system of fabric. And I guess my question is, what strategies do you have in increasing resilience among the people living in informal settlements, as I feel like they're the most hit in terms of climate change, whereby they live in vulnerable areas, and the flood that happened in April really affected them, whereby most of the houses were swept away by the water, and some of them even ended up losing their lives. So which strategies do you have in mind to build their resilience and prevent them from such climatic threats?
Thank you. I think probably I'd respond to that because I have engaged with some of the initiatives that are working at the local level. And as I mentioned, I'll first start with what Prof said. The execution is where the challenge is. But right now, because Kenya, we are very far, or maybe we have moved ahead in terms of coming up with these strategies. Climate change and climate strategies have been devolved to the lowest level at the world right now. And as of last year, during the Africa Climate Summit, we had the launch of the Financing Locally Led Climate Action Program, the FLOCA program, that I think I was part of the team that we were coming up with the Participatory Climate Risk Assessment, the PCRAs, and it was actually good to note that, most of the counties were very specific on the challenges that are affecting them. And recently, about a month or 2 ago, the finances were released to the counties that were now supposed to go to the award level. But now, again, the challenge has been that this money has been regulated, and it has some specific requirements for them to be disbursed, that at the county level, there are the climate change policies that are there, the units have to be established, the strategies have to be there clearly. So you find if the capacity has not been built to that level, then they might not be able to access the finances. Again, I think our representative from NEMA mentioned about the county integrated development plans, and you find that a percentage has been put from the county finances to be able actually to address disasters at the county level. So you find that this money is what is supposed to now roll down to the ward level. So I can say that strategies have been put, but now again the challenge comes in with the implementation of the same. Yeah.
Tell you what, we'll take one more question because we have one more panelist who hasn't had a chance to answer a question yet. So that way we're equitable across the board. I'll hand the microphone to the first person, and that person can be the one that asks.
Good evening. My name is Benitez Kipiegon. I'm a researcher at Homeflow. And I am also a volunteer for a community-based organization. So someone talked about the 15 billion project by 2032. To say it, it's very fancy. But to me, I think the government is spending millions of money, flying dignitaries, CSS to the project sites, but in the long run, they end up planting 1,000 trees. Maybe 10 of them or 100 survives, but the rest, they don't survive. But then we have these initiatives from the communities, like what I participate in. They really struggle to raise trees and to get resources to maybe plant these trees. They even go further to ask from the government for donation of seedlings and others. But in the long run, these people end up buying from their own pockets, but we have the same government that will tell its citizens to plant trees. They organize for a day, they again go, they spend a lot of money, a lot of vehicles are being fueled, and they are still talking about climate change. So I don't know in what perspective can we say that these communities can be empowered, because for the case of those ones, if we have these organized community organizations, it's very easy for them, because even you'll find some community members asking for seedlings to plant in their own farms, but it's nowhere to be found. So I think if you have an answer to that, I'll be so grateful. Thank you.
Okay. And I think what you just ended with, if we have the answer, I think that's where the question is, whether I would be having the right answer to say. But what is more important from where I see it is and we all agree this is a noble initiative to increase the tree cover. I think it's coming from that background is that we agree this is the way to go in the wake of climate change. So that's a good initiative that government has put in place. But again, what you're saying, the cost of doing that, and that's where the debate should be, continuously. I believe in continuous improvement. I think this is a discussion that are very important, that we really now to really focus what kind of the support that need to go to the community organizations that are on the ground there. And I believe one of the state department that is responsible for that target is headed in that direction, because all these initiatives are domiciled within certain counties, within certain wards, and where communities, groups are. And again, for me, it's about the formula and the continual improvement. But overall, the whole initiative, I would say, the right direction in the wake of climate change. Thank you.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. For me, I just have a concern or either a question. There is a pressing question that has not been raised about the impact of climate change on food security, which is a very pressing issue. As a food scientist myself, I believe our country, there has been a lot of initiatives that have been set aside to boost food security in the face of climate change. And like we had there was an act for water harvesting, which I don't know whether it worked. And then there was another initiative, especially now that maize is a staple in our country. So you find the governments have very many initiatives to try to increase maize production. There was a Galanakulalu project, which failed also. So I believe these people, you people who are in the environmental science, you are the people who inform the government concerning the impact of climate on food production. And crops such as maize, they are water intensive, and we have other countries that have resolved to grow crops, other crops that are climate smart, like millets, instead of, so that we don't over-rely on maize, which is not working, and every year our country is importing. And the situation is getting worse because, like we can see the South African part of Africa, the Zimbabwe, Zambia, they are going through a lot of challenges because of climate change, that the El Nino that struck their country, and now they will not be able to produce maize. So for our country, are there plans or initiatives that are set aside so that we can maybe produce the crops that can sustain the nation, or venture into other things that are economically, they can boost us economically so that we can be able to import, instead of using whatever we have to import, and then we are always complaining that we don't have money, don't have food. We are always asking for relief from other nations. So the people in the climate sector, what are you doing about the impact of climate on food production? Thank you.
So, so food production isn't just farming, right? And every time we put in a crop, we put in a group of trees, it's sometimes a science project. It's what's the pH level of our soil? Do we have enough water? Is this the appropriate tree to grow here? Is this the appropriate crop to grow in this place? And so part of that is, what should we be growing? What opportunities do we have to grow certain crops in certain regions of our nation, whether it be Kenya or America? And so we have a real problem in America where we have invasive trees, and they're fruit trees potentially, but they cause other problems. And so what we're trying to get back to is planting the appropriate crops for our ecosystem where we're at. But also, let's not forget that you say fertilizer. That's not the panacea. That's not the answer, because it creates more problems. So what's the education that we're doing for regenerative agriculture, or thinking about planting other things, other grasses around our other soils for carbon sequestration, so we have pairs of crops that grow together. In Mexico and Mesoamerica, they call them the three sisters: the beans, the squash, and the corn, and they all grow together as a group. But we have, as a lot of places in the world, we've gotten away from the way that we have traditionally done agriculture, and thought about it as more farming, as a business. So I would contend that there's education around soil management and how we really think about the future of sustaining our agricultural lands, but then also planting the things that we can grow in that particular area, especially in abundance, where we can then export those grains, those things that we have here, in exchange for other things that we can't grow yet that we want to consume as a nation. So I hope that.
Again, I want to thank the panel for giving some excellent answers, and I want to thank the audience for giving some excellent questions. This concludes the panel, and thank you for your time and your attention.
Partnerships that will advance our research ecosystem. With that, I welcome all of you to the Kenya National Research Festival 2024. Let us collaborate, innovate, and transform